What is up there, everybody? Welcome back to Christian Penguin 1990. My name is Matthew, and today for this video, for actually the third video the same night, I'm just trying to do them all at one time. We're continuing with creation versus evolutionism, and we're covering natural selection. Now, a lot of people are crediting natural selection to Darwin. However, as we go through this, you'll see that's actually not who originally thought it up. And you can look it up for yourself, the original person who thought it up, but I'm going to go ahead and get started with it, and you'll see what I'm talking about. According to Darwin and Darwinian evolutionists, natural selection is the primary way evolution occurred. So in other words, it was through this process, apart from random mutations, that caused evolution to occur over millions and millions of years. Which, of course, is not millions of years, it's not even over 10,000 years. But anyway, however, if you really go in depth for the original origin of natural selection possibilities and even the theory of it, it was a creationist, Edward Blyth, or Blyth, B-L-Y-T-H, I think it's called Blyth, in 1835, thought of natural selection first. Blyth saw natural selection as a preserving force. In other words, it helped select the genes needed for the animal's survival. It doesn't cause evolution. So he didn't believe in evolution either, but he saw this as a process to where, again, it just selected the gene that was already in the genetic code of the animal, such as you have a dog who's going to be in a colder climate, so the hair is going to be longer. If you have a dog that's going to be in a hotter climate, the hair is going to be shorter. That's all it was doing, and it allowed the animal to survive, and that's all he saw it as. Darwin took it and said, oh no, over millions and millions of years it would cause completely separate species and kinds to come about or evolve, and that's wrong, because that's not what we see in science. It defies the law of biogenesis, the kinds thing. Lauren C. Isley made note in Darwin and the Mysterious Mr. X, a book that person wrote, that Darwin made constant unacknowledged use of Blyth's work throughout his book, Origin of Species. So in other words, this person wrote a book when they did the research and found out, hey, wait a minute, Darwin, all he did was steal a bunch of work from this guy named Blyth, who's a creationist, reworded it to make it sound like he came up with it for evolution, just a tad, not much, and he's taking credit for it. So if you really look at Darwin, he hated women, which you can see in several letters. He hated women, so he was a chauvinist, he was a racist, and he's a plagiarist. He plagiarized. So really not the best person you need to look up to when it comes to even science. But so yeah, they decided, you know what, I want to go in depth and see where all this came from, and come to find out, they found out that Darwin actually stole a lot of Blyth's work and tweaked it here and there to, like, instead of thousands, he put millions or long ages or what, to make it sound like evolution. And all he did was just take it from a creationist and reword it. So that's where he got a lot of his stuff from. And when I found that out, I was like, I didn't even know that. But it was kind of interesting. Many evolutionists are beginning to abandon natural selection. That I found shocking too. And when I before you hit the ceiling, I want you to understand, when I say many, I do not mean all as in 95% or more. I just say many. There was no percentage I could find, but there was a good amount that were, abandoning natural selection as a way of evolution to occur. So if we were to put a percentage, let's say many would not be half. So let's say about 35-40%. That's a good number, I guess, for a many. But I don't want to be quoted as that, because this, like I said, this is just what I came across, and it said many, a lot, and so, and those are the main two words I kept getting when I was doing the research for this. It was many and a lot. So I'll say about 30-35%. That's an estimate, an approximation. Don't quote me on it as finite. But anyway, basic Darwinism teachings this: variations alone caused all life forms and plants. No. But anyway, so what Darwin basically was saying is that the variations which cause subspecies, and here's what causes species was, from all I've been able to look up, Here's what causes separate species. So let's go back to his finches, because that's what he's known for, is the Galapagos finches. The finches in the Galapagos cannot mate with the finches in Europe. So now you have two separate species. You have the European finch and the Galapagos finch. However, within that species, you have your subspecies. Long-breasted, short-breasted, long-beaked, short-beaked, whatever. And Darwin just couldn't see that. He saw everything as its own separate species when actually they were subspecies of a species. So again, what you have is the kind of animal is a bird. The species, in his case, where he did a lot of study, was the Galapagos finch. The subspecies of the Galapagos finch was the long-breasted, short-breasted, and so on. So that's actually what you see in nature, and that's what you see biologically, what is occurring. But people get the word kind and species mixed up, and they never ever hardly notice that they're actually subspecies. So, and that's creationist and evolutionist. I'm not pinpointing just one. You have some that they have that blinder, and when something comes, you do realize that you're both arguing about a subspecies. It's not even a species, right? And so you got to remind people that they're subspecies too, and they'll forget that. But that's what a lot of them are. So evolution requires random action. Some say natural selection is random. This means it isn't natural selection, but actually natural randomness. Randomness never will purposefully select what is better or advantageous for an animal's survival. So in other words, again, let's go back to the dog representation. If you place a dog and it's in a cold climate, what is going to happen is, if it was natural selection, it would select the gene for long hair so the animal could survive. If it's random, you would get a random gene that it would pick, and it might eventually pick the right one as the animal dies off. However, you got a problem. If you put two dogs up there that never actually live in that area, one, they're not going to go there on their own. You're putting them there. So if you take a male and female dog and you stick them up there and it's cold, they're going to die off because they're short-haired. Now you have a problem, because unless you take more dogs of that same species or subspecies, then you're going to have a problem, because they're never naturally going to go up there on their own, which means the natural, hence natural selection, natural process will not happen of selecting the genes for the animal to survive. So you're just constantly throwing them up there, but they're not reproducing, which is how the genes are getting selected. So you're still not causing anything to happen. And that's what people are also missing too when it comes to talking about creation versus evolutionism, is a lot of stuff that has come about scientists have done in a lab, like hybrids and so on. And they're saying, look, this can show how. I was like, you did it in a lab. If it would never happen naturally out in nature, it cannot count. Plain and simple. And I tell that to some creationist friends too when they say, well, we can do this. I was like, it doesn't matter. If it does not happen naturally out in the wild, it does not count. Plain and simple. You can do a bunch of stuff in the lab. That doesn't mean it's going to happen naturally outside in the wild. So don't sit there and make a test tube baby, basically, which none have, but make a test. Let's say you make a test tube baby and say, look, this is how it's going to happen out there in the wild. Like, no, you had controlled conditions. You had it confined. You had it quarantined. You had it to where no bacteria or anything could get to it to make it sick and die. So no, that's not naturally going to happen. So again, sorry, I was going off on a tangent, but you get my point. Neo-Darwinists also rebelled against theory saying that natural selection has never given evidence of being able to change one kind of animal into another. They decided it was random mutations that did this. So Neo-Darwinists are the main ones that are coming away from natural selection, saying there's no way it happened, it was just random mutations. Well, again, you have a problem, because if a mutation is random, it's not specific, which I'll get into mutations later. But if you look at something, it has to be let's say it was a mutation, it has to be a very, very specific mutation. It wasn't something random. For example, where they like to say that dinosaurs became birds, which no, they didn't. But for that to happen, it would have to be very specific mutations over and over and over again, not random ones. Like one day, poof, you got a feather. Poof, you finally got wings. No, it doesn't happen like that. So, again, dinosaurs did not evolve into birds at all. Actually, to me, that would be de-evolution, because you're going from the king of lizards, basically, to a bird that I can shoot with a gun and eat later. So, to me, that's de-evolution. But they had to explain something with the loss of the dinosaurs, hence the meteor theory and everything else. But the actual answer is the flood, if they would just realize that. But anyway, while offering many theories, which they've come up with tons of theories of it, all evolutionists admit that only natural selection and or random mutations could possibly cause evolution. So all the theories they've come out with, it all boiled down to two things being the factor that started it all: natural selection or random mutation. And that shocked me too. I was like, well, there's a ton of theories out there. I've seen several of them and read several of them. But they all said, well, according to natural selection, or this other one would say random mutation. So it's like all their theories were based off only these two. And we're covering how natural selection doesn't do it. So next time we'll cover mutations, and I'll show you how mutations don't do it. So then there goes the whole theory. But anyway. Okay. So we got several things to cover again. Evolution by natural selection is when these processes enable animals to cross the gene barrier and produce a new kind of animal. If this occurs in a species, it will only cause subspecies to come about. So in other words, they're saying a cat over millions of years will eventually become something that's not a cat, or a cat-like animal. It'll become something like a dog or a horse or whatever. And that's not what you see scientifically. Genetics is the ultimate enemy of evolution, because it shows how evolution will never work. Bottom line. So, and that was actually from an evolutionist. I forgot who said it. And sorry, you know what? I just used a quote, didn't I? Dang it. I'm sorry. I try to stay away from quotes. Anyway. So again, you have your kind of animal, your species of animal, and your subspecies. So that's your main three. And in that order. Sorry, the change in weather's got my sinuses messing up. So your variations, these occur by rearrangement or assortment of existing genes that are already in the DNA. It does not create new DNA. And in order for evolution to occur, by their definition, through natural selection, it would have to create brand new DNA for the animal, or the random mutation would have to create brand new DNA. It doesn't. It acts on what's already in the genetic code. Mutational changes. Some variations are by mutational defect. However, these are always detrimental to the individual. Never once have they found a beneficial mutation. If you look at it in its bottom line, it's detrimental to the organism, whether it be bacteria, a virus, or even a human being or another animal. It's always detrimental. And like I said, for it to be a beneficial mutation, it has to add to the genetic code. In other words, something that was not in the gene code already has to bring into it. So it has to add to the DNA code. However, every mutation you see is either an overuse of what's already in the genetic code, such as 2 heads, 2 legs, whatever, or not 5 legs, where it has an extra leg, and so on, or it pulls from the genetic code, such as in bacteria, where antibiotics can't kill the bacteria because the bacteria has mutated to where it has lost genetic information. And that loss of genetic information is what the antibiotic would latch onto to kill the bacteria. However, with that loss, that's also what allows the bacteria to keep multiplying. So you'll still have the bacteria, but it's not going to multiply, it's not going to do anything, and eventually it'll die off anyway by itself with its time span. So it's still detrimental. It's not helpful. So survival of the fittest, this was something somebody coined because even they didn't understand how it worked. But this actually accomplishes the opposite of evolution, basically. And there's a lot of people that they call it just the survival of the fittest, and that's not how it works. So it would actually be survival of the luckiest, not the fittest. But anyway, so one thing that kept coming up in natural selection was, of course, the peppered moths, and as I've already mentioned, the finches. And peppered moths have been beat to death already. It's been proven over and over again it did not actually happen that way. It was not proof of anything. The guy actually even lied about it. So it's not proof yet. They still keep putting in textbooks over all the time. We do need to cover Lamarckism, and that is the theory of inheritance of acquired characteristics. This was disproved, however, which why I'm not already covered that much, by August Weismann in 1891. So Lamarck came out with this theory of inheritance of acquired characteristics. However, August Weismann in 1891 studied it very thoroughly and actually just showed that the theory was a farce. It doesn't work. So he disproved it. So there's really not much to cover. In Descent of Man from 1871, Darwin repudiated natural selection as hopeless and returned to Lamarckism as the cause of evolution. So in other words, in Descent of Man, he went away from natural selection because he realized, there's no way to prove this, no way to show that it actually did anything for evolution. So he went back to the Lamarckism theory, and yet in 1891, 20 years later, a guy showed that Weismann showed that Lamarckism doesn't work. It's disproven. So you have Darwin going away from natural selection because he says it can't work, and and he goes to Lamarckism, and then this guy comes out later and says, well, guess what? Lamarckism doesn't work either. It's disproven. So where are you at, Darwin? The problem is the theory doesn't work. So here's why it can't occur through natural selection. It'll never cross the types, kind from another kind. It'll never cause it. Scientists will never bridge the gap of basic kinds. This is seen in nature. It's called, again, it goes back to, actually, I'll cover it right now. Hence the law of biogenesis. Kinds will always produce after their kind, just like God said they would in Genesis. So in other words, a dog will always produce a type of dog, but it will still be a dog. A cat will always produce a cat. Horses will always produce horses. Birds will always produce birds. You'll never get anything different. You might get separate species because they can't mate with each other anymore, and you might get subspecies, but you will never get a different kind of animal. That's the point. That's just like God said. It's not going to change. The one thing you need to realize with Genesis and God being the creator is God set the scientific laws already in the days of creation. We're just discovering some of them over the years. That's all it is. God already had them in place. We're just now discovering them. So to sit there and try to say that science disproves God when yet God created science when he created all creation and made the scientific laws and physics and how the universe worked, that's redundant. You don't, go to something and for, like, say, a painting and says, this proves that there was no such thing as a painter. No, it's not going to work that way. And so it just makes me laugh where they sit there and try to say that something God created is what they're trying to use to disprove his existence. I'm like, that's not going to work. God would never create something that would help disprove him. So there's only 7 ways that changes will occur. Attitude. Person changes their attitude. From environmental effects such as pollution and so on, that can cause a lot of detriments. Accident, which would be like a loss of limb, like if somebody got in a car wreck or something. Hereditary variation, recombination and dominant recessive genes. So in other words, if, like I said again, where they might have animal would have 2 heads, which has had happened with some turtles. I think a snake one time, maybe a goat. I can't remember if there was a goat. I know there was a snake and a turtle. They had a cow that had an extra leg coming out of its back, stuff like that. It's just overused genes, but it's nothing different. And the variation, of course, would be you have long-haired Dotson, short-haired Dotson type thing if it was a dog and so on. Polyploidy, which is plants, 3 or more haploid reproductive cells, and it's the only place you'll see them is in plants like that. Then you'll have your hybrids. What was one of the latest hybrids somebody discovered a couple of years ago? the coy wolf. Coyotes and wolves had mated. They called it the coy wolf. Somebody actually discovered a grizzly polar bear hybrid. It looked like a grizzly when I think they were grizzly hunting, or they were bear hunting. I know that. I just can't remember if it was grizzly hunting or not. But they were hunting. They shot the bear. They thought it was a grizzly, and come to find out it was actually a hybrid between a polar bear and a grizzly bear. So hybrids are occurring in nature on their own. Just scientists aren't doing that, and they're actually becoming their own separate species because they're a hybrid. So again, and that which is ironic because if you go back to the Ken Ham, Bill Nye science, the debate, Bill Nye made a comment. He said, if creation was true, you'd see new species pop up. Well, you're seeing them. They're called hybrids. They've been popping up for the past several years. So you just helped prove us. Thank you. Appreciate it. However, none create new kinds of animals. So even though they're a hybrid, they're still a bear. They're still a canine type animal. So, but again, that's pretty much covers natural selection. Be here next time as we go over mutations. And I will see y'all then. Hopefully going over this is helping y'all strengthen your faith in God's word, that God did not lie. God did everything like he said in the 6 days of creation, and so on. But hopefully this is helping y'all strengthen your faith in God's word and the truth of creation, and giving y'all something to be able to use to witness to others. So I'll see y'all next time. Again, we'll be going over mutations. So definitely be here for that, because there's probably going to be a lot to cover with that one as well. And I will see you then. Until then, people, God bless. See you then and later.